My name is Michelle HAGEWOOD, as you said, and I'm today calling from the Northwest. I'm in Port Townsend, Washington, and we are in our glory months here. It's a good time to be quarantined, and this is a beautiful place to be quarantined. And I'm excited to share with you some of the things I've been working on during this time. I am also an arts administrator, so connecting with artists is one of my passions that goes alongside my studio practice. So I run an artist residency here in Port Washington at a place called Centrum, which is actually where I'm calling from today because it has the best Wi-Fi. So I can't show you my studio today because that does not have Wi-Fi, but I'm going to show you a few images. So I have been making work for you know, like many of us for most of my life in some form or fashion. I have 2 art degrees, and you know, despite that, I'm still learning every day about what it means to be an artist. I went to the Maryland Institute College of Art, and I got my MFA at Vermont College of Fine Arts in Montpelier, Vermont. At an amazing low residency program, which taught me how to make art and have a full-time job, which is how I have made my living. And I've been a museum educator up until I was a residency director. And throughout most of my art practice, my work has dealt largely with, so I'm diving into more recent work, and these are just some sketches that I started working on when we went into quarantine. My work has gone back and forth. I've worked in installation, I've worked in digital media, I've dabbled in both illustration and animation, and I've been making my way back towards sort of an illustrative world, a world that's sort of connected to my interest in both children's literature and also speculative fiction. And during quarantine and kind of amidst the crises of the world, I think painting and drawing really became a tool for grounding and thinking. And sort of giving space to the subconscious. So these are just some small sketches that kind of got me started. So these are small ink on Duralar, and I use acrylic fluid paints. And these are a good example of forms that have been really consistent for me. And I've recently been revisiting them. Fractal forms, I'm really drawn to thinking about forms of architecture and relationships between sort of, quote, natural architecture and human-made architecture, and equally, especially since my time in the Northwest, up to living in a more remote peninsula as I am now, I was in urban environments. And a lot of my time in urban environments, I found I was really drawn to sort of underappreciated forms of architecture and things that, paraphernalia that we sort of live with, like antennas and plumbing and pipes. There's always been a lot of construction in the cities that I've lived in, and I'm really drawn to sort of things in a state of construction. And similarly with forms like crystals and trees, I think I'm really have a lot of fun playing with the way that these forms manifest into environments. And so again, these are just some paintings, getting a little larger here. These are both paintings that were old drawings that I then worked back into this current time, really kind of feeling my way back into painting and experimenting with what it means to work on a material that is translucent and working on both sides of the material. So kind of formal explorations, but also just some continued contemplation on these kind of otherworldly landscapes that kind of have always been a fascination of mine. I've really just derived a lot of pleasure from creating these worlds. And I've also been working on a graphic novel, which is kind of exploring an alternate place that sort of parallels some of our current conditions and relationships to the environment. So while it may not be explicit in these works, there's some narrative that's sort of driving these. And so along with that, here's two very different pieces that are just randomly put together here. The one on the right is a sort of study of a forest floor that I've taken colorful liberties with, but which I think sort of illustrates a vocabulary I'm trying to build in thinking about the forms and the roles of twigs and rocks, and this is something at the end of my presentation I'll circle back to in terms of how that is meaningful for me. And then on the left is part of some world building I've been doing in imagining kind of a landscape of crystalline flowers, and also looking at a lot of ocean life and pulling in references from coral and ancient sort of plant forms. This is just to show you sort of a range of the way I've been exploring these. My work really oscillates sometimes between very messy, kind of paint dripping and intuitive building, and then sometimes it's very tight and precise in terms of looking at reference material and meticulously lining out the details. So these are some of the more sort of exploratory sketches. And here we have, again, kind of a continuation of that, and then another piece that is related to this graphic novel I'm working on, where I'm sort of, for me, painting is kind of another form of writing. So these are ways that I am thinking about sort of what this landscape I'm dealing with is. I'm kind of fleshing it out and sort of discovering what's there through building them visually, which is really informing the writing, which I can't share today because it's just not far enough along and it's just too precious right now, but it's there. And then I wanted to end on this series of pieces I've been doing that for me are the most complete body of work that has come out of this time, which resulted from spending a lot of time walking around my neighborhood and really looking at architecture with fresh eyes and starting to really think about a lot of things in terms of the sort of privilege of architecture, and also it's the way it symbolizes, you know, our presence within the world. And I started sort of playing with these house forms, which I was both attracted to, but also sort of finding I had a complicated relationship to, as I was sort of, you know, kind of grappling with my own privilege in terms of being in this sort of quasi-utopic setting, and also just reading a lot and thinking about climate. And so these are some images that came out of that work. So again, you can kind of see here the two kind of primary forms where I'm thinking about rock and its relationship and sort of crumbling and, you know, tenuous structures. And then also I'm thinking about growth and overgrowth, and have always loved, you know, the experience of strangling trees, and I've always been so fascinated by those. And these are some additional works. These are actually, one of these is one of the earlier ones that came out of it. So these are not chronological, but again, sort of just thinking about a sort of precariousness about existence and the things we make and put forward, and also just questioning and exploring the relationship those things have to trees, to beings other than ourselves. And then this is the last image that I'm really excited about. This is actually still in progress, but I'm starting to layer these drawings and cut into them, and I'm creating these sort of like shadow box like dioramas of a sort, and I'm having a lot of fun with that, and I'm starting to push the material into a new direction. So yeah, That's it.
This question is from Daniela from New York.
Have you read about transcendentalism? It is a philosophy where the spiritual slash religious, however you want to see it, meets nature. Make me think of your subconsciousness point you briefly mentioned. Also, if you think painting as a kind of writing, which is how I see texture as a form of text, I totally recommend The Practice of the Wild by Gary Snyder. I love the laborious detail of your work. Feels so meditative in a way.
Yeah, and thank you, Daniela. Those are no, I have not explicitly looked at transcendentalism, but I will take that recommendation to go further into that. A lot of the whatever you want to call theory or readings that have informed my work are I recently read Robin Wall Kimmerer, Braiding Sweetgrass, which is just a lot about relationships between the human and kind of more than human and indigenous knowledge, but which I think would connect a lot what you're talking about. And thank you for the words about the work. I'll have to get that name of the text you recommended for painting is writing.
And also, thank you so much for responding. And also, Anisha, yes, Thoreau, Emerson, like all those transcendentalists came from, the American landscape painters in the 1850s. So it's really interesting, like Thomas Cole and Friedrich Church. And I just kind of kept thinking about when I was looking at your imagery, how you look at mirror almost as if it's like a mirror to you. I don't know if it's, obviously it's about you too. Now I'm getting very deep. This is just me reading your work, but it's also like in relation to all. So there's all these like interlacing kind of roots that are kind of connecting. And it also makes me think about like, I don't know if you've read about like The Secret Life of Trees and how trees communicate under the roots. So all of this literature that's so fascinating and all of this philosophy that's so fascinating kind of like popped into my head. And I really appreciate you sharing your work and process. I know that we don't have a lot of time, but this is just me kind of giving you points as I see your work.
This is Anish, and I just want to kind of continue along that line as Daniela, because the Transcendentalists, especially in the 1800s, they were a community. And what I really like about your work is this whole meshing of architecture with the natural world. And architecture is about community, is about people. And these transcendentalists, like I said, in the 1800s, they were a community. They got together and they gave lectures and to each other, and they had great discussions. What I wanted to know was on your second to the last piece, the one that has the houses surrounded, not this one, the one before that. Yes, this one. The piece on the right, is the architecture growing out of the tree, or is the tree growing around the architecture? Because I'd like to kind of get a better picture, because it's totally opposite as far as concepts go. So that's what I just wanted to know about that piece. Thanks.
Thank you for reinforcing those ideas. It's like really exciting that those things are coming through to y'all, because those are all important to me. The community and the kind of way we can think positively about architecture and relation and nature, and also question it. And your question is me. I don't know. I think I want there to be ambiguity there. I think I want us to really. I think it's a question. I think these works are me trying to present questions and to be read. I think honestly, if I was to have to choose one, I think I'd vote for the tree. with the trees. Not that I want to see the demise of humanity, but I just also want to see trees survive. The Over Story also, in addition to what y'all mentioned, I recommend that book too, along with The Secret Life of Trees. That's an amazing one. Yeah, this was fun. Thank you.